At the core of every vampire story is this belief that vampires can survive on human blood alone. The more blood they drink, the more powerful they become.
Where did the idea of a beast that lives solely off blood come from? Comparative anatomist Dr. Joy Reidenberg searches for evidence in the animal kingdom. She knows of only one creature that fits the bill.
There are lots of animals that drink blood: mosquitoes, leeches, ticks. But there's only one mammal that does so exclusively, and that is the vampire bat.
How does this creature attack its victims?
They have exquisite sensors on the front of their face. These sensors can detect changes in temperature. If you have blood vessels that are really close to the skin, they radiate heat. They sense it, and they hone in to those blood vessels, those veins that are right near the surface.
Then, just like a vampire, it unleashes its most terrifying weapon.
If you look very carefully at this skull, you'll see it has some very big teeth. They're razor sharp, very, very sharp teeth. They make a cut, blood comes out, and they lick that up in their tongue. The vampire bat actually has some saliva with an anticoagulant, in other words, a chemical that keeps the blood from clotting. And guess what? It's called Draculin.
Why can this creature survive on blood alone when others can't?
Vampire bats can exist just by drinking this blood. Because they have a special digestive tract, it has enzymes that can break down all that extra protein, and they can handle the extra iron load that comes with all that blood.
What would happen if humans had a blood-only diet like vampires?
If we drink blood, we'll get nauseous, and we may throw up. All of that extra iron can be poisonous at high levels. Humans can't handle a diet of blood.
Europeans first encountered the vampire bat in the 16th century and named it after the vein-biting monster they feared so much. But where did this fixation with drinking blood come from? Historian Stephen Curtis thinks that a clue lies back in the Middle Ages.
Unlike today, where we very rarely see blood or corpses, if you went to the butchers, you would see animals being slaughtered, you would see the blood running through the streets. It made it less of a shock to see it.
Medieval people believed that blood physically contained a person's life force, the very energy that kept them alive.
We can see traces of vampirism in beliefs around drinking blood in the period. In drinking it, they would get that hit of revitalizing energy.
The power of the life force in blood was thought to be so strong that some people believed you could get its benefits just by touching it. Stephen investigates how ordinary people went to public executions to get their hands on some.
There were medieval accounts of people in Ireland and Denmark that were drinking blood directly from executed people, particularly when it comes to an execution, the idea being that that blood still has vitality because that person is being killed before their natural course, so the life energy is still contained there.
Some people believed that even the blood of criminals could bring health benefits.
There are accounts that this blood actually cured certain illnesses.
One of the most famous examples of this blood mania took place at an execution nearly 400 years ago.
This is Banqueting House in Whitehall in London. This whole area would have been full of crowds of people who would have come to see the single most important moment of bloodshed in the history of England.
In the 17th century, an English king called Charles I was beheaded in London. People believed that the blood of a king was among the most potent of all.
They would have been the atmosphere of a sports event or a music festival, because executions were a public event. The moment of this that makes it so pivotal is this was the king, the reigning king, who was being executed. All the accounts suggest there was a hush, a moment of absolute shock, and then there was a huge rush towards the front. His head being held up for the crowds to see, blood spewing forth from his neck. People would be trying to get their handkerchiefs stained in that blood.
Young blood was supposed to contain the greatest concentrations of life force.
People believed the life force you have in your body is used up slowly as you age. blood of a young person being executed would have a certain amount of life force and vitality within it. You can see the vampiric links quite easily there.
The regenerative force of young blood is at the heart of a gruesome 17th century tale. Elizabeth Báthory was a countess living in Hungary. Myth has it that one day a maid tugged her hair, and the countess slapped her. Her nails dug into the girl's skin, spattering blood onto Báthory's face. A day later, she noticed that her skin looked younger where the blood had touched it. The countess started luring young girls to her castle and killed over 600 of them, allegedly so she could bathe in their blood and remain forever young, earning her the reputation of a real-life vampire.
Contemporary thought was that the body, the soul, and the spirit were linked, and that the blood was the liquid that flowed between all three.
Blood was very important to vampires because by drinking someone's blood, you were taking away their soul.
They weren't just killing you, they were stealing your essence.
But astonishingly, in medieval times, the lust for drinking blood was not confined to vampires. Biomedical scientist Sheila Hugh is an expert on human blood. She investigates how some alchemists tried to distill young blood to make it easier to drink its supposed life force. In the 14th century, a French alchemist called Rupesisa claimed to have captured a pure version of it.
He suggests retaining the blood from babies and from young men.
Sheila is going to try to replicate what he did. She follows the alchemist's account and starts by heating up the blood sample until it boils to separate its components.
Blood contains red cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. The plasma is the section that will start to vaporize and distill across.
Once it reaches 70 degrees Celsius, the blood starts to break down and the plasma flows across.
There's the first drops coming through the tube and into the collecting vessel.
Today, we know this yellowish substance as pure blood plasma. But in the eyes of a medieval person, this golden elixir was concentrated life force.
The medieval people would have been happy to pay large amounts of money in the belief that this product were going to extend their life. They believed that the colour gold was related to the colour of the spirit. They believed that they were actually transmitting the spirit by feeding this elixir to a patient.
This medieval alchemy seemed to reinforce the belief in blood's rejuvenating powers. Even kings and academics fervently believed it. But could there be anything more than superstition behind vampires finding young blood more potent? Sheila believes that an experiment could reveal the answer.
Electrophoresis is a method that we use to sort products, such as proteins, by their size.
Samples of young blood and old blood are dyed blue. By running an electric charge through the samples, Sheila can separate the proteins. The more blue there is, the more protein is in the blood.
In the old blood, we have some proteins, and if we move across further into the young blood, it's much darker stained, which indicates there is a lot more protein.
Could these extra proteins hold the key to the centuries-old quest for everlasting youth? Young blood has been shown to improve the memory of older mice and reverse symptoms of aging.
These proteins in young blood could be the proteins alchemists were looking for with life-enhancing properties.